quickly just want to introduce everyone. My name is Laura Wesley. I'm with the Constitutional Rights Foundation. And Patty, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Patricia Vasquez. I teach seniors over at Bell Gardens and Bell Gardens High School. Been teaching with Sierra for a while now.
Great, thanks, Patty.
I'm Gregorio Medina, Constitutional Rights Foundation.
And I'm Sarah Badawi, also with the Constitutional Rights Foundation.
If you were able to join us on our last webinar, that was on getting started with Civic Action Project. So we showed how you should get started. We explained the 5 core lessons that is involved in the Civic Action Project. Talked a little bit about introducing CAP to your students and showed some examples of what Civic Action projects look like. So we showed you some examples of student-created projects, as well as overviewed the website. So if you missed that, I did send out the link yesterday to a recording of that webinar. But today, we are focusing on the actual project, the Civic Action Project. So we're talking about what is the project component and its key elements. Also, why you should do Civic Action Project with your class. Why is it important for your students to do a Civic Action Project? We're also going to talk about how to get your students started on their projects, and those are kind of the nuts and the bolts. How do you improve students? How do they select issues? Establishing deadlines and that sort of thing. And then also, how do you keep them on track? What tools in Civic Action Project are there to help make sure that the students are progressing in their Civic Action Project? And then finally, where you can find these resources and support you need. So we will show you everywhere on the website where you can find the support that you need in order to have a successful Civic Action Project with your students. So with us today, you already heard a little bit, Patty introduced herself. She is a longtime Constitutional Rights Foundation teacher. She actually started with the development of CAP many years ago and has been doing Civic Action Project with her students for over 8 years. She teaches AP US Government and is also the Social Studies Department Chair at Bell Gardens High School. That's just located east of Los Angeles. And we're super thrilled to have Patty here to explain, how she uses CAP with her students on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you so much for having me, by the way.
Oh, we're super excited. And also, just a side note, Patty is also one of our CAP teacher leaders. So she is online, which Sarah will go over a little bit later, where you can ask questions, or if you want some feedback on how to do a certain part of CAP on the website, Patty will be online and be able to help you with that as well. So what is the project in Civic Action Project? Well, by the title, it's kind of self-evident, right? It's a project is a culmination of a variety of civic actions that students take to impact an issue that they care about. And it's a long-term undertaking per se. It's not something that you're going to assign students this week and then 2 weeks later, expect them to have an impact. It really was designed in a way to be introduced, at the beginning or the middle of a quarter or semester, or if you're lucky enough, a year-long course, which really gets students engaged in civic action. And when we talk about civic action and actual project, there's not a ton of pre-planning that goes along with the project. Really what we're hoping through the tools on the website that students are guided to be able to identify an issue, connect that issue to policy, that's the sustaining piece, take a variety of different civic actions, and then end with that project presentation. So they don't start with a month or 2 months of studying and researching and planning out 20 different actions they're going to take. They're going to do some basic research after they've identified their issue, and then they're going to start taking a variety of civic actions. And that's really just a way that mimics real life, right? We might plan what we want to do, but once we start actually doing things, we realize, oh, wait, and now I have to do this instead of that, or this is a roadblock that I face, so what else should I be doing? So nothing is ever completely planned out, and so that's why we focus on getting them started, taking action earlier rather than later, and really how those civic actions build upon each other, because you're informed by taking one civic action will inform your how or the type of civic action that you might take next. So again, this webinar will focus on the project piece.
So at this point, we'd like to address the question of why would a teacher introduce civic action projects into their classroom? So I'd like to pose this question before we start sharing some of the reasons we designed CAP to do it and some of the outcomes we've observed from teachers and students that have already done it. But I'd like to pose this question to Patty. Patty, can you share with us why you decided and have continued to do civic action project with your students at Bell Gardens?
Yeah, now for me, it was kind of like a natural involvement of my curriculum. For a long time, we had to answer why is government required? Why do I need to learn about this stuff? And for me, especially, it was just convincing them how this had real life application. And it kind of evolved from doing book work, yes, doing worksheets, yes, showing videos, and kind of it went from me trying to convince them to them convincing themselves that the actions that they were taking actually did matter, and them getting involved in becoming productive members of society and their communities. So giving them the tools to go ahead and make that change for anything from a traffic light to more police patrolling to better lighting. I mean, you name it, they started to see taking it from theory to practice. And I think that first year was a pivotal one for me, just seeing them excited and motivated to take these things that they were learning in class and having some real life application outside of the campus or outside of the school confines. So, well, some of them did make the difference also within the school, so that did help. But like I said, those practical tools, that lifelong learning that we try to go ahead and make sure that our students walk away with upon graduation, that was kind of like the seal the deal for me, that I was going to continue to do this just because of the change that I would see in my students.
That's great, Patty, because that's kind of what we've heard from and observed with students and heard from teachers, is how the CAP experience makes, especially classroom content, makes it relevant to students by allowing them to apply it to something they care about, which then makes that subsequent civic experience that they're creating meaningful, because they're applying this classroom content to address a problem or issue that they feel is important to address in their community. And then finally, creating sustainable change. And this is really why it's so important to make that policy connection. It reminds me of a story that's been circulating in CRF for years, if not decades. It has to do with a student who volunteered when we could feed the homeless. Afterwards, she was asked how she felt about the experience, and for her, she described a very gratifying experience. And then she also shared that she hoped that when she grew up and she had kids, that they would also feel inclined and also have the opportunity to feed the homeless. Now, there was something very problematic about that response to us here at CRF, and I wondered, I'd like to pose this to the participants in the webinar, what do you think might be problematic with the response of this young lady who said that she hopes that when she grows up, her student or her kids would also have the opportunity to feed the homeless? Absolutely. And that is exactly what we found very problematic with that response. Her anticipating that this issue or this problem would not only be chronic, but that it wouldn't necessarily change or get better. This is why we feel it's really important to give the students an opportunity to mind their potential, look at some policy strategies to address the issue, and create some sustainable change that doesn't require them to make the same voluntary effort every week or every month or every year, but really looking at fundamental primary causes and effects and how they could make them take some action today to maybe move a step in the right direction toward them not finding a solution, at the very least trying to diminish and decrease the problem or issue, as opposed to anticipating that it would be around forever.
And I think that's what an important part of what Civic Action Project does, because it really enables students with the skills, the knowledge, the ability to try to impact, to try to make a difference. It makes them understand that they're capable of doing that they don't just have to wait and let someone else try to solve it. They're actually capable now of trying to make an impact on the issue that they care about.
Absolutely. And by making that policy link, it turns something that might be aspirational by giving them the tools to actually do it, something that's actually doable, something that they can actually do. So how do I get students started on their projects? Well, we've actually embedded some of those fundamental steps in the CAP curriculum, and they're after lesson 3, where students will select an issue, form their CAP groups, and what's also really important is for teachers to establish goals and expectations, a beginning, a middle, and an end, or I like to call it an exit strategy, so students don't feel that they're going to be doing this infinitum, that there is going to be a closing of the loop where they'll be able to share some of their findings and outcomes of their effort. But I'd like to again pose this question to Patty. Patty, in terms of like having students select their issue, how do you go about it? How do you facilitate that step in the CAP process, helping students select their issue?
Now, I think, like you said, after lesson 3, when we have them initiate that proposal, right, and we troubleshoot the proposal and try to figure out whether, or help them figure out whether it's really a policy-related issue that they're going ahead and posing. Once we finalize and kind of agree that it is policy-based, I put for the class, like on poster paper, the different subjects that have been picked so far. And I tell them that they can't duplicate first come, first serve kind of scenario. And as they're going ahead and putting them up there, by the time we reach lesson 5, I tell them that either they have a choice. They could stick to what they want the issue to be for their own project, or they could also join somebody else's project if they feel passionate about that specific subject. And at that point, I could have maybe 3, 4, 5 groups per class. Sometimes it'll become 10, 15 groups per class.
Great. And Patty, and how about individual students working on projects? Is that something you encourage, discourage, or simply allow if there's one student who has an issue that nobody is interested in working on, but something that they feel really passionate about? Is that something that you...
I definitely, if sometimes, because I do have mixed classrooms, so I do have special ed, I do have RSP, I do have English language learners, I do have high achievers, mid-range achievers, right? Everything's in my class. So if I have an individual student that might be an RSP student or a special ed student, depending on what the topic is, I will kind of encourage them to join a group. But sometimes, you know what, I've had students be highly successful that are RSP, but the subject that they picked is something that they're really passionate about, that they do want to make a change. So it's just about, like I said, giving them the proper tools to achieve what it is that they want to achieve. And again, we keep forgetting that we just want them to make an honest attempt at change, even if that change doesn't come in a semester's time.
That's great, Patty. And I mean, in really honoring that student's passion to address an issue, I think that's a really great way to go about getting them started on the project.
Yeah, and I know, Patty, I think you let them choose whatever issue that they feel like they are passionate about or what they care most about. I've heard of other teachers also who have themes for whatever reason. If they're, for example, Quinn is at environmental technology, so her school, she requires the students to pick something that has to do with the environment, which is a broad range of topics. But I have heard of other teachers picking themes and students having to meet those themes. But then also some are more organic, or it could be any issue that they care about, regardless of theme.
I do have one class that is what we call a pathway class, and it's like this year, in years past, I've had the green pathway that deals with environmental careers. This year, I have an ICARE pathway, which is a social justice, child development, social work kind of pathway. And that's what they're going to be focusing on. It's about sexual harassment, sexual assault policies on campus, off campus, how the reporting takes place. So, I mean, it does lend itself to that, the fact that sometimes if you want to narrow the field, you can. If you want to expand it, you can. So I think that's what I like a lot about the curriculum or the planners, is that it's open. It doesn't try to tunnel you in or, to a certain issue.
And I think that both what you and Laura just described is a really great example of how CAP makes some of the content that they're already exploring in the classroom relevant to something that they really care about or something that they feel interested in trying to address. Establishing goals and expectations. So Patty, how do you let them know what is the long-term plan, the beginning, the middle, and the end? How is it that you let them know what the expectations are?
Oh, well, like I said, it's all about documentation and evidence. I tell them that they're going to get a good grade no matter what, as long as I see an honest attempt at them trying to make a change in their community. So we do long range planning and we backwards plan a little bit. So I tell them when the due date for the entire project's due, which is usually our finals week. And then after that, we go ahead and say how many. I require them to at least take 3 civic actions to make the change. If they want to take more, great. If they feel like the first action is a little bit of on the weak side, they could do a 4th civic action to kind of cover what the first one might be lacking. So, and then we go ahead and say, okay, well, when do you think your window should be? So I'll take one day that I'm just holding meetings with the different groups, and I sit and they come to my desk and we talk about what their calendar or what those due dates might look like for them.
That's great. And again, that's really important for the student. It helps them manage their time and helps them manage the progress of their own project.
Patty, can I ask you another question about like nuts and bolts? Do you set aside, well, first of all, do you have a year-long course or a semester course that you're working with these kids?
It's a semester course, and after I'm done with my 5 lessons, it's pretty much on their own independent time. Or if they're finished their work early, sometimes they'll ask me, can I go to the side and make a quick phone call? I have a meeting at such and such a time. Could I come in during your lunchtime to call so and so? And at that point, we go ahead and make those arrangements. But for the most part, it's very much an independent project once you finish with the 5 lessons.
So as far as using class time, it's basically just in those first 5 lessons, and then after that, you just kind of supervise, help them out.
Yes, it's strictly supervision. 1, 2, advice. 3, sometimes, like I said, you're going to have some of those high achievers that are done with their work early, and they could always work on their civic action planner. They're thinking it through. The final report on how it's all coming down, gathering their evidence, printing out evidence if they need to print out evidence. Or like I said, like advising, like, okay, so the petition, how is it again that I do a petition, Ms. Vasquez? Oh, remember, you go here, and then they get their computer and they go ahead and start doing that. So it's very advisory at that point.
Great.
Right. So where the students are taking the leadership and the teacher is kind of serving as the mentor, the guide through the process. And we've had other teachers who also have established, okay, every Friday's CAP Friday, we're going to spend 20 minutes working in our small groups doing CAP. So there's a variety of different ways that you can guide the project, but it is student driven, like Patty had said.
And I'd like to very quickly address Aaron's question. What do you mean for civic action? Isn't it just one project? Just to clarify, each CAP project consists of a variety of discrete civic actions. Simply identifying an issue that they care about is a civic action. Finding a policy link is another civic action. Consulting with a policymaker or creating a survey or a petition, those are all discrete civic actions. All of them combined become the entire CAP project. So what you're assessing in terms of the CAP project is the process, and the process consists of discrete civic action. And hopefully, Aaron, that answered your question.
And we'll show you at the end where the student toolkit is that walks them through the different types of civic actions that they can actually take, whether it's creating a petition, how to interview a policymaker, attending a public meeting, creating surveys. Those are all examples of civic actions that students can take, and there's a place on the website that explains those to students.
And the way the students will be documenting those civic actions is through the use of our CAP planners. We have 4 different planners, and we're going to go to the website and look at them very quickly so you can see them, but there's a proposal, thinking it through, the civic actions planner, which is we ask students to complete the same planner at least 4 times so that they can document 4 discrete civic actions. And this is what the proposal planner, the online proposal planner looks like. And what it is, it consists of a series of prompts that guide students through developing their inquiry and also developing their civic action project. The first one is what is the problem, issue, or policy they propose to work on? Choose something that there is a chance that they can impact. I would always like to say, make it personal, something that they really feel is impacting their daily life. Ideally, something that really impacts their daily life. But if they need more clarification on that question, if you hit on that more help box, you have some more clarifying responses or clarifying additional reading that they can use to clarify what the expectations are in terms of responding to that prompt. And we also have the standards connection, which the students might not be as interested in finding, but it's useful for you to see if it helped really address, if their response really helped address that standard. Provide 3 claims as to why you believe this is a problem. Describe how each claim affects people in your community. Once again, this is where I really encourage students to make it personal. Why did they choose that issue at a variety of issues or problems that may be affecting their community? Why did they choose this one? How was the problem or issue related to policy? Now, in the proposal, they may not know the answer to that, but what you're doing is you're prompting them and letting them know that the expectation will be that they will be making a policy connection, because that is what's going to make their ideas and efforts sustainable, even beyond their initial efforts. And we have a video that was created which illustrates really the prevalence of policy and how it really affects our daily life. So if students want a little more support on understanding why it's important to connect the policy to their problem or issue, you can encourage them to watch that video.
And this is where students probably struggle the most, is trying to figure out how their particular issue is connected to policy. But pretty much every problem out there has some sort of policy connection, and students have to figure out, do they need to create a new policy? Do they need to modify an existing one? Maybe they need to eliminate a policy. Maybe they need to leverage a policy, or maybe a policy just needs to be enforced. But those are 5 ways that when we talk about how you connect your issue to policy, how that can be done. And so, as Gregorio mentioned, there's a video, if you have visual learners, that explains those different ways that policy can connect to a particular issue. There's the more help, which describes it in writing. And additionally, in lesson 3, the handout talks about connecting policy to issues. So it's really distributed throughout the CAP process, that whole connection to policy issue. And as Gregorio had said before, that's the sustaining piece. That's where you see that change, is through that policy connection.
And that is really where they're practicing becoming influential in terms of influencing the decisions of the decision makers in their community. So it's really important for them to make that policy connection. So the next planners are thinking it through. This is where the students can actually reflect on their initial efforts or initial research, their initial civic action, and maybe shift gears. Maybe the primary cause or effect they identified in the proposal, maybe that's changed as a result of their initial research and efforts to try to become informed on the problem or issue. This is where they document maybe shifting those gears. In any case, this is where they will document the outcomes of their initial efforts, research, or the outcomes of their initial civic action. Once again, there are plenty of boxes for the students to respond. The more help boxes if the students need clarification in terms of exactly what the expectation is related to that prompt. The next one is the Civic Action Planner. This is the same planner that we recommend students complete at least 4 times, documenting at least 4 civic actions. It's possible that they will document, and you should encourage them to do that. They could document a variety of civic actions that they've completed since the last planner. As Laura said, we recommend that maybe you space the planners out once a week. You assign a planner, they submit it the next week. This is your opportunity to review and monitor the progress, and also give them feedback on whether you think they're on the right track, and to make sure they don't make a left turn that might actually make the problem a little worse.
And some of their actions might not be accomplished in 1 week or 2 weeks, so they'll just document that. Like, I tried 3 times to call my my local legislator and wasn't able to get through, so my next civic action is to make an appointment to see them in their office or something like that.
Speak to what do you call a field deputy or something. Start really looking at different ways to actually get the information or the support that they need. So once again, the planners consist of a series of prompts that keep the students focused and help guide them through the development of their CAP project. And finally, this is a really critical part of the process, the CAP report, where the students reflect on their CAP project, their efforts, the outcomes, and really important, what did they learn as a result of the civic experience that they created through CAP. Once again, how did they try to impact the problem or issue? If they've completed the previous planners, this should be very easy to complete because they've already documented everything, which is a really important skill. What I always tell students, sometimes if you don't document something, it's almost as if it never happened. So this is why it's so important that they use these planners to document their experience. And another thing these planners can be used for, if you save copies of these planners, almost guaranteed the next semester, the next year, another group of students will probably want to address the same issue. Imagine if instead of starting from scratch, they can actually review the previous group's effort and then take that effort another step in the right direction. As Patty mentioned, not necessarily solving any issue in one semester, but the sustained effort and continue trying to pick up on what maybe a previous group left off on addressing that same issue.
And a point, and I can't remember if we made it earlier, I think we made it in the last webinar, is the impact. We're not, as far as assessment's concerned, again, which we'll discuss on November 8th, we're not assessing, did they actually solve homelessness? Did they actually get a policy passed or what have you? It's really, we're assessing, do they know the steps to take along the way? Did they take quality civic actions? Did they follow through with their civic actions? So again, not focusing on the actual solution, rather the steps along the way.
I personally feel, I think the ideal outcome to this process is that the student becomes an expert on the impact of that issue on their life and on the life of their community. That in and of itself makes them a much more effective citizen moving forward as an adult. At least on that issue, they would have made connections with professionals who are dealing with the issue, other people who were affected by it, really becoming experts on why it was important to address that issue to begin with.
And Patty, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on the planners. I think Gregorio did a pretty good job explaining them. Is there anything that we missed or that you want to share about how you use the planners?
Oh, no, not by any means. The only thing I did see somebody about how do you print them out, the printable program planners, because I do work in a low-income community. Sometimes I do run across that problem that some of my students might not have computers at home, and I do have the option of them doing folders and project folders, so that way they could go ahead and in their own pace, I could go ahead and print them out. They could write it out in class if they want to type them up and print them, and that way they're consistently keeping their planners together. They can. They do have PDF versions. You can fill them out online and then print them out. I've done it that way. I've kept them online as well. I've done all three. For me personally, I like it when they just keep it online. It keeps everything for the group in one area. But like I said, you have to be sometimes flexible with the community that you work with. So keep that in mind when you're choosing how it is that you're going to go ahead and collect those planners. All three work exactly the same. It's just, I think all teachers agree that we hate bringing those papers home.
So starting off at my dashboard, and then there's the planner section.
And you hit online, hit the online, and what you go into that little tab right there that says continue the last preview. This is how you can look at the blank planners that we just overviewed right now, just a few minutes ago. But if you wanted to look at how your actual CAP classroom will look like, there you go. You can hit, I think that's the one here. You go hit that one right there. And once you register your students, they will get usernames and passwords, and you will have your CAP classroom online. And this is how you'll be able to see, monitor student progress and whether they completed the planners. And why don't we click on that second planner right there, see when that's completed. And this is what a completed student planner looks like. The green boxes is where you're able to provide some comments and some feedback. One thing I would like to say, as you can see, there's like 6 to 8 weeks of planners if you had them complete one a week. I would not ask students to redo a planner. I would simply give them feedback on maybe what you saw maybe that you saw what might have been problematic about a planner, and then look for evidence of them applying that feedback on the subsequent planner. They're not going to have a lot of time to redo the planners. And once again, this is a learning experience. We do not expect them to get it, quote unquote, right each and every time, because they're learning. And hopefully by the end of the process, they'll get a rhythm and they'll know exactly what it is they're supposed to be doing and how they've done it and how effective their civic actions or their experience has been.
Just to recap, it's dashboard, planners at the bottom, click online, and then if you want the blank planners, you go continue to the last preview. And if you want to see your classroom, you click on planners completed or in progress. So either way, you can either get your classroom or blank planners. Now going back to the dashboard.
Go to the student dashboard, and this is what the students will see. They won't see the lessons or any of the stuff that you see on the teacher dashboard, but below, you will be able to see as a teacher what the student dashboard looks like in case they ask you, where can I find some of the resources? For instance, the planner or the toolkit or tips. You can look at what a student dashboard looks like, and then you can explain it's right under that first paragraph of CAP planners. That's where you can find where the toolkit is, the planners, and this is what the students would click on to fill out a proposal planner. And when they click on one of those links, they'll get a blank planner to complete. And then once they save it, it will be uploaded to your CAP classroom, and you'll be able to review their progress and provide some feedback.
And again, this student dashboard is something that your students will have access to as long as you upload a roster and create an online classroom here on the CAP website. And the point here is really to help do kind of what Patty was describing before, which is that the kids really have the space to take a lot of self-direction and to really be working independently. You are there for support as a coach, and to remind them of the resources that are already available to them here. So besides the planners, the toolkit, which we mentioned before, again, this is like a menu of civic actions for them. If they're stumped on what to do next, then they come to you. And I know my students, for any kind of project, that sort of eternal question of like, Miss, now what do I do? This is the answer. Send them to the toolkit and ask them if they've tried a different civic action under these different categories. These are sort of quick one-pager how-tos that really walk them through it.
Ask or challenge depending on your teaching stuff.
The other resource that's great and that's available for your kids is the connect part of their student dashboard. The discuss button, if they go there, that gives them access to the CAP Youth Board, which we talked about in the last webinar, which are sort of CAP alums who are students who have been through CAP, who are there to give them a hand with questions, troubleshooting, whatever. And they can find lots of online support here. They can also, if they want to down the line, publish something about their CAP work and share their work on social media. But again, this is all online, easy stuff that you can refer them to. It's not sort of work that you have to do personally. It's just really reminding the kids about the support that's available for them. For the support that's available for you, we have our teacher forum, which you access through your dashboard. And there are a couple of different sections to this. In terms of getting help or troubleshooting, we've got a professional development section, which is a sort of more structured conversation about common issues that we have heard from teachers, where teachers are looking for support and troubleshooting. This discussion board is facilitated by us here at CRF, as well as by Patty and Quinn, our two CAP teacher leaders. There's also a more sort of targeted nuts and bolts frequently asked questions page. This is partly what you would expect, just common things that we've heard over the years, but also there's a section down towards the bottom. If there's a question that's not answered there, click on the add new and send us a question, and somebody will get back to you with feedback or tips. Yeah, so that's the teacher form. Also, you can email us if you have questions that you don't think fit neatly into some area of the teacher forum. Don't hesitate to check in with me or Laura or Gregorio. You can find us from the contact tab, I guess, on the CAP website. And we'll also share with you our email addresses at the end of the webinar. Very easy to find. It's just our first name at crf-usa.org.
And then someone had asked where they upload the rosters for students. So if you go to my dashboard, getting started with CAP, there's a way where you can submit this orange button here where you can submit your class roster. So again, that was my dashboard, getting started with CAP, it's submit class roster.
We're going to try to keep the support and PD ongoing over the rest of the semester and through the rest of the school year. Like Laura mentioned before, this webinar series is going to continue on November 8th. We're going to take a look at questions of assessment and figuring out or sort of highlighting some different possibilities for culminating activities that you can do. You know, Gregorio mentioned earlier on that one of the milestones you want to sort of lay out for kids is when are they going to be expected to present the process and findings of their CAP. And we hope that that'll be for an audience even beyond their classroom or their school. So we're going to be talking about that in the next webinar. Also, please keep us posted on social media for developments and progress from you and your students. If you do decide to use those PDF planners that we showed you a couple minutes ago, you can share those with us too. Snap a picture, tweet them, share them with us on Twitter. Our hashtag is #CRFCAP. So any developments from your students' work, we'd love to hear about them.
You can also email us at any time, and we can either facilitate if you have a department meeting and you want us to do a presentation, or if you just want to chat with us via sharing our screen with you in your classroom, or if you're local and you want us to co-teach with you, we can do that as well. But here are our email addresses. You can contact Gregorio, Sarah, or myself, and we're happy to help you throughout the process.
We can create separate CAP classrooms on the website. What you'll see on the website when you get to your CAP classroom, there'll be a little window on the top, and when you click on it, it'll filter out different CAP classrooms. So if you upload it, but if you indicate distinguished by period or by class, Andrew, who's our website administrator, he'll be able to create different CAP classrooms for you on that same page, and there'll be like a drop-down tab that you'll be able to click, and you'll be able to see period 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, and just for future reference, I remember for a while there I was doing, like I said, I have it for one semester, and I would have fall semester a set of students and spring semester another set of students, same period. And the CRF is really good about getting the rosters up right away or as soon as they could. Usually it's really fast. I'm shocked at how fast I would do it. And like I said, the filtering is awesome. Again, and you could label spring 2018 or 2019, however you want to go ahead and differentiate that for yourself, they would be able to go ahead and do it.
Yeah. And as Laura just demonstrated on the website, you can see that separate groups, and you can see on that page we have an EHIA and then a high school 12. Those would lead me to 2 separate classes or 2 separate sets of planners.
Right. So it's just important, as Gregorio mentioned, when you upload your roster, you should make sure you say period 1, here are all the students, period 2, here are all the students. That way we can make sure they get in the correct periods.
Right. And if we get it wrong, don't hesitate to let us know, and we'll make sure you get the right classroom or the right students in the right classroom.
Kumar had a question. I joined late, but I think I heard that each step along the way is considered civic. That's correct, Kumar. Those are all the different, there's a variety of different civic actions along the way, and that's what makes up the project in Civic Action Project. There is a toolkit on the website that will you can direct your students to, that are examples of civic actions that they can actually take now.
It is a good self-service portion to be able to access for the kids.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't need a lot of explaining. They can open it and read it and get a good idea.
Pretty self-explanatory. You let them know these are examples of civic action, and that's what they'll see. An inventory of discrete civic actions that they can apply to the project.
So again, thank you so much, and we'll hope you'll join us for the webinar November 8th on assessment in the culminating project.
And don't hesitate to get in
Hesitation.
touch if you have any questions in the meantime.
With Patty on the teacher discuss forum.
Please,
Or by
Thank
email
you.
with
please,
us.
please.
All right.
Thank you very much.
everybody.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Bye-bye. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks, Patty.